Hello, I'm Nicola and welcome to the Being Our Best podcast. I'm a coach and I have been a coach my whole career. For the last 2 decades, I've worked with executive leaders, professional athletes and people who generally want to be their best in whatever they do in organisations across the world. And I love what I do. Every day I get to stand side by side with my clients, looking at their world, and quite honestly, I'm amazed by it all they are and all that they lead. We look at what they want, we look at what they're moving towards and what that is at its very best. And we look at who they want to be and who they need to be in order to achieve that very thing, who they are at their best, how they do that and how they show up in their world as that person and the version of themselves that people want to be on the journey with too. In this podcast, I'll be talking to those leaders who, like you, have stories. Leaders who will be sharing their stories, their lives, their lessons, their learnings from all that they've been through to get to today, how they've done it, and importantly, how they've done it as their best. I hope that within these episodes, you find insight, inspiration, and a tip and technique or two. I am joined today by Emma Colwill, who is a former International Business Development Director for Pukka Herbs and now co-founder of Not Impossible, a tech for good startup reimagining work experience for employers and young people. Now, I have known Emma for quite a few years, Emma, professionally, and I was chuffed to bits when you said that you would join us. So thank you for being here today with me.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, no, absolute pleasure. Hurrah. So let's go then. So when people meet you now, Emma, they see all that you do and all the impact that you have and I guess the leader that you are today. But I wondered if we could kind of start back at the beginning and when you first stepped into a leadership role. Who were you then? Who were you when you first stepped into that leadership role?
This is a really interesting question for me to reflect on because when I really sat down and thought about it, I was like, actually, I've always considered myself a leader. So I, was that person in school that would get involved with organising things. I would lead arrangements for my friends. I got nominated to be head girl at my school and that kind of evolved, obviously, as I started into my career. I became a leader of customers. I became a leader of projects. I became a leader of events and activities. And what I reflected on and realised is that actually I was somebody who people gravitated towards, which at the time I probably didn't completely realise. People felt that I was approachable, they knew I would listen to them, and they knew I would also try to take a position of trying to help or support if needed.
I get a real sense you kind of stepped into that space quite naturally and people were with you and you knew, almost like unconsciously knew the part that you played for other people.
Exactly that, which I think, in a true leadership sense, as I say, I probably didn't really recognise that at the time, but it started, I think, making me or helping me be aware of some of the qualities that I had that are important and valuable to have as a leader and as a person. We talk about leadership as this kind of persona or this entity. Actually, it's a personality and it's who you are as well. And so I think the other thing I really reflected on for this is also that I've always considered myself a leader among people rather than of people, which I think is also an important distinction to make. So I have worked together with people in a leadership capacity rather than in that kind of traditional hierarchical sense, which I think some people can default to sometimes.
So that, and I guess that's an inquiry I've got in my mind there. So it felt very natural for you to step into that space, whether conscious or not back then. Did you have a conscious concept of what leadership was back then? Because it feels like something that you just did. And I think there is a sense of consciousness of what you were doing. But I guess, did you put it in that word? Did you put it in that box in a sense back then?
Potentially not, but
No.
what, again, it's interesting now reflecting back that actually I've always looked up to leaders that have inspired me in some way. So either through their thinking, through their style, through their authenticity. An interesting memory surfaced for me, which was in one of my earlier sales roles. So I have a sales and business development background, and I had formed a relationship with the managing director of a brand that I was working with in the kind of mid 2000s, and she made time for me. You know, she encouraged me to use her to kind of think about my future, to have chats about my development, and actually her giving that time for me at a time when we were, you know, we had a wholesale business, we had a retail business, we were a really beautiful health and wellbeing kind of cosmetic toiletries brand, and the fact that she made that time for me was really profound. So it kind of crystallized that actually this is someone I can look up to. As I say, it's somebody who inspires me, and I really value and appreciate her sense of authenticity in everything that she was doing.
So that played a part in shaping your concept of what real great leadership is at its best. Somebody who worked with integrity, somebody who made time for you, created space, you know, to almost like use her.
Yes, exactly.
Leverage and to build you up in a way. She focused on. I almost get the sense that she focused on you rather than the job, in a sense. You know, it's part of her core role.
Yeah, exactly that. You know, the opportunity to step back out of your roles or from the business and just have a wider, you know, broader, you know, deeper conversation about who you are and, you know, where you might be going was really transformative. And I'm very fortunate to have had a few different experiences like that in my career.
I feel, as you say, that you were kind of genuinely invested in by her.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely.
Lovely. And that's fairly on in your career, was it?
It was, yeah. So I was probably 5 or so years out of university by that point. And yeah, you know, we're still finding my feet in the world of work and actually in myself as well.
And so if you were just those few years into coming into your career, still finding your feet, what did that give you? What did her approach to leadership give you? How did that serve you almost?
Yeah, so it gave me a real sense of, as I say, needing to work with and for people that I could look up to. And I think in turn, what that's done for me is that I've also wanted to cultivate and nurture myself as someone who people can look up to. And I, you know, you've known me for a long time. I don't say that in a self-centered way at all. It's just that I have that sense of reciprocity, I suppose, of, you know, I've had that given to me and I want to make sure that I enable it for others as well.
Paying it forward in a way, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, lovely. Okay. So what are the kind of key learnings through your career then, if you think about the career that you've had? What have you discovered about yourself as you've gone through your career?
What I have particularly learned, and obviously we know each other from my time at the health and wellbeing scale up Pukka Herbs, that was a time where I really realised that I thrive in forward thinking, collaborative, just progressive cultures that are both creating environments where you can have high performing spaces that are also inclusive. And so the duality of that is something that I have absolutely loved. It's what we're wanting to also create through Not Impossible. And I just know for myself as a person and as a leader that that's where I ultimately show up as my best.
There's a sense of energy in all that you're talking about there. It's a real real kind of forward momentum, a sense of togetherness, a sense of energy, collaboration. Like we're phrasing that kind of, we're in it together.
Exactly that. And maybe an interesting story connected to that is, you know, you and I met just before Pukka was acquired by Unilever. I had on and off worked for kind of sales leaders at that time, but we'd had a period where I had ended up working directly with the founders, and we'd been acquired. We didn't exactly know what that was going to look like, and as you might imagine, Unilever had an idea that they wanted to put somebody in to like lead the international development, who had come from the Unilever community, and so I was part of that process. I got to meet the people that were being put forward, and which gave me that sense of being involved. And ultimately, the role went to somebody called Tice, who I know that you know. And actually, the In It Together thing is interesting that you pick up on, because one of the things that he did, so we had some kind of intro sessions in the lead up to him taking the role. And the very first one we had, I remember him saying to me, you know what, we're going to have a lot of time to talk about the business. I actually really want us to talk about us. And I want to talk about you. And I remember at the time being like, oh, wow, okay, this is not what I thought this conversation was going to be.
Okay.
But actually, what happened in that moment, and that has really stayed with me a lot, is that he, in that single moment, showed me that he cared.
Yeah.
And actually, what we were becoming, which again, I can say that now with hindsight, is we were the representation of the existing and the emerging future world of Pukka, which was about growth, it was about integration, it was about cultural development, team building, all sorts of things. But having that human connection in that moment, and getting to know each other and being in it together, ultimately unlocked a huge amount of things.
There's a bit of me that kind of is rather cheeky, because I do know who you're talking about, but I almost get a sense that there's a surprise in that moment, like that kind of that human-centered approach, which is no surprise to me at all, came through, and excitement at, oh my goodness, what is possible, because we're connecting in this really human way. We're both looking forward towards the same sort of clear, compelling, exciting thing, and the importance of sort of, I guess, two organisations kind of coming together. I haven't got a better way of putting it away, but the humans within it that make it work.
Yeah, exactly that. And it felt exciting.
Yeah,
you know, I am a 7, I suppose, in the print model that you and I've worked with. I don't know if you want to explain a little bit about that.
Yeah, so our listeners may or may not know about print, which is a tool that Emma and I have used, one of the tools in my toolkit that I really enjoy using, and I'll just say a moment about it. It helps you be your best. It gives you a very deep understanding about yourself. It's a personal insight tool, but its purpose is to help you leverage up to show up consistently as the version of yourself that you want to be, and the version of yourself that other people want to be on the journey with. So what's the relevance of that to you? If you bring that into the story, what's the relevance of that 7-ness?
Yes. Well, so you say, what have you discovered about yourself? You know, it's like when you have those connections with people that are like, they are very authentic, they are shared vision, it's all about purpose. You know, obviously we were in the added context of being in a mission-led, impact-driven business. All of that came together, and for me, in my what is called in print 7, so it's to enjoy life and be happy. It was, I mean, it was fulfilling, it was exciting, I was curious, I was like, you know, it was a very energizing thing. And I feel hugely fortunate to have had all of those experiences from a business and leadership and personal perspective. And
within that, so I feel like that was like an environmental thing, be it a person and a way of being leadership that was coming in, that really satisfied a lot for you and enabled you to be your best. I wonder, have you got a time within that period, or within any period, when actually you think that time, that thing I did, that moment was me at my best? Have you got an example of that?
So skip forward a bit in Pukka's journey, and we were part of another integration, which was very significant for the business. It's probably a different podcast in and of itself. But we essentially were navigating significant change that was also really uncertain, in terms of we didn't exactly know what the ultimate destination was going to be in the total entity and for us as individuals within it. But I used to lead this thing called the monthly country call. So it was a call where we would bring together key stakeholders from the markets, as well as key stakeholders from our global team, to share updates, exchange ideas, talk about performance, but also have a space for a cultural experience of us as a brand for the people who were working in the markets. And I was really committed to making sure that actually that was something that we were going to keep quite consistent, because we had this kind of whole world that was changing around us, but the countries needed us to be present, be consistent, and actually be positive. It was a changing time. There were spaces that were maybe not so inclusive or energizing. And so what was interesting is that I had hosted a call which we recorded, and I got a message back from someone in the supply chain team who, a couple of days after we had done the live call, had listened back to the recording and sent me an email at 5:30 on a Friday saying, "Emma, I just need to tell you that I've just listened back to the recording, and actually you've held the space in that call for everybody to show up as their best. You've listened to them, you have created this energizing, refreshing space, you have been purposeful, you've listened to other people's perspectives, you've summarized or guided the discussion in a way that served the multiple stakeholders on the call, all sorts of different bits of feedback." And it actually really stopped me in my tracks, because given the wider context of what was going on, I think if somebody had come to me and said, if you and I had had a conversation around that time and said, "Are you being your best?" I probably would have said, I don't think so. Whereas actually I was, and I didn't know it. So there's a few different dimensions of that. It's what do you know within yourself that you can root into so that you can show up at your best and consistently, but also how do you stay open to the feedback and reflections of others, good and bad, so that you can take that on board and continue amplifying or taking the learnings whenever they do come up.
The words I get as I listen to you is a feeling of sort of openness in that moment, a congruence within you almost, a strength maybe, and a certainty that I think the feedback that you got was that gave you a sense of, or gave them, a sense of confidence. And a sense of being listened to and included, and that value that you have, I think, which is around togetherness and collective energy, and everyone knowing the part that they play. And I guess in that moment, if you could go back into that, was it online, did you say?
Yes, it was. So
if you go back into that seat almost and feel how it felt in the moment when you were being congruent, when you were being clear, when you were being strong. What's that like for you? What's that like for you?
I mean, in all honesty, it just feels natural.
Yeah.
It's a version of me would say it's exciting and it's energizing, and it is all of those things. Yeah. But it's just also how you are. Yeah. And it feels very, as I say, very natural, very organic, very true. Authentic. Yeah, just true. Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, exactly that.
Where did you learn that?
I'm not sure I really know.
Well, I guess where did you, that's one version of a question. Where did you learn that? But was there a time when you learnt you had to be, or you had to lean into learning how to do that, to speak your truth? Because I know a 7-2, which is the other number, and they can be influenced by their environment. What I hear is like an energy that's going outwards, a strength that made people feel safe.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I again, this was an interesting one to reflect on, because we referenced earlier, you and I met just before the acquisition, and that was not a great time for me in many ways. I was traveling a lot, and which I loved and still love.
Yeah.
But spinning a lot of plates, a lot of commitments. I like to be a busy person, so that just compounded. And I think you probably met a version of me that was quite exhausted,
holding all the plates.
Yeah, exactly, and not really holding myself.
No.
And so the work that you and I have done has allowed me to discover that version of me, in a language and through a model that I have found incredibly fascinating. We've done it on and off over the years. We're dipping back into it now in my new context, but I think that having done the work, but also doing the work, leadership is an always on journey, and you don't do some coaching or go on a course and then that's the end of it. It's like, how do you revisit some of those things in an evolving context so that you can continue to show up well?
So you're talking about, we're talking about the work that we've done here, and that kind of isn't my intention, but there's something about, I think what we have done is you have found your ways of working with yourself to show up as the version of yourself that you want to be. And actually, no matter what the context, it's being self-aware in the moment, and applying that self-awareness and that strategy to your context, whatever the context is. And you say doing the work. I think what you're saying just there is doing the work is a constant inner analysis and inner journey. It's not doing the work, it's doing the work.
Oh, absolutely, which I think, human-centered leadership, which is increasingly what's being talked about, like that means that you yourself have got to do the work to be able to show up as your best for yourself and others. The other aspect of that for me has been about finding balance. So the energy side of me can go off the chart, and I'm somebody who likes to be in community. I like to be around people. It's part of what led me into being in sales and business development. But I also need to make sure that I find balance for myself in all of that. How do I do that? Good question. Some of that's about habits and practices. Again, lucky for the work that we've done together, but I've done all sorts of yoga and yoga teacher training, and you just kind of cultivate mindsets and habits that enable you to find balance. So mindfulness has been a really big one for me, I think. Heading off to a meeting and making sure that you are just cultivating a sense of focus on what you're doing, but having a consciousness about where your own energy is at for that moment, I think has been also really helpful.
So mindfulness to you is an awareness comes into it as well, a self-awareness and a choice in terms of how you are expending your energies.
Yes, exactly that. Yeah.
So Emma, we've talked about much of your career at Pukka Herbs and that part of your life, and how you do you at your best. How does that translate to now? What about now in your current role as co-founder?
Yeah, so I'm now co-founder of Not Impossible. We are a tech for good startup. So we're a work experience matching platform, helping 16 to 25-year-olds from less advantaged backgrounds discover local employers that they're really excited about and from a leadership perspective, what's brilliant about it is that so Luke, my co-founder, and we are leading something new and emerging, but we are also connecting with other leaders who want to create change. They want to create opportunities for young people. They believe in social mobility. They've just not necessarily had the model or the vehicle to be able to unlock their beliefs and their drive to create change and opportunities for young people. So that sense of community that I've previously talked about, it translates differently now. And we have a really big vision of what we're wanting to create together. And it's fantastic to meet leaders who are also change makers at the same time.
I feel, as I listen to you, a very clear vision. I've got the word strong, which I used earlier. There's a strength in it, but that strength comes from belief, I think.
Definitely.
And what do you, because I hunch that running this organisation is different in the environment to what you were in previously. How do you do you as your best in this setting compared to that? Or is it the same, or what differences do you notice?
Yes, it's really different, obviously. Being in a scale-up organisation versus a startup organisation, naturally the settings are very different. What I've recognised in myself is that because I am a people-centred person, Luke and I are a duo at the moment. We are really fortunate to have a small team around us of young people who come to work with us on internships. But the wider ecosystem that we're now engaging with across Bristol and Bath has been really a big catalyst for me, connecting with those and forming new trust networks outside of us as an emerging organisation. So I still have that sense of togetherness and collaboration and partnership, but actually just how that shows up in our new context is different to how it has been so far.
You've gone out and found it, haven't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
You've gone out, whereas previously it was perhaps in your teams or the organisation, it was there, you were together naturally because you all work for the same organisation, but actually I've got this phrase like you've gone out and got people, towards your charge, as to what you believe is important,
Yeah, we're building a movement. Building a movement, and that is, it's centred in belief. And it's about people who want to create change. So being at the heart of that is, it's very profound. Yeah.
If we're thinking about who's listening to this, this podcast for me the intention is to share stories from leaders like the people who are listening. So I guess, is there a nugget or a tool or a practice that serves you well that you would, that you would recommend to other leaders to help them navigate their world well? And it may be something that you wish you'd known sooner. It may be something you wish you have now. I don't know. But is there a nugget or an insight that you would love to share with other people to help them be their best?
Yeah. So on this, so I'm a huge fan of Brené Brown, and I'm sure I won't be the last person to reference that on this podcast series. And I listened to something from her the other day where she talked about leadership used to be about muscle. Currently, it's about brain, and in the future, it's going to be about heart. And as we become increasingly digital, obviously with the increasing adoption of AI, our social media world, all sorts of things, actually, like how do we center ourselves in what makes us uniquely human, which is about connection, it's about empathy, and it's about courage. And so I have had the great fortune of having learned that, particularly in my current role as co-founder of Not Impossible. We are a tech for good, as you mentioned, social mobility focused startup doing something that's emerging and new. And I keep that in mind through everything that we're doing about how I can make sure that we're as human focused and as human centered as possible.
Connection, empathy, and courage, I think, are the words. So, yeah. So that is the future of the future of leadership is human leadership. Yeah. Okay. And for you, I suppose, if you think about a mantra for life, or a saying, or something that's got you through thick and thin, kind of as before we finish, as a parting insight, what is your mantra for life? What is your saying that actually serves you well when you navigate it all?
Yeah, so there's an African proverb, and it says, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. And I discovered that just as I was starting at Pukka.
Yeah.
And it really, really resonated with me. And as somebody who is very values led, really want to live a life and a career where I create impact at scale, I think about that a lot. So how do I bring people around me that enables us to have shared vision, shared purpose, and create shared impact? So going far together, that bit of it is for me really powerful, and I hope it is the same for others as well.
Yeah, because that's quite insightful, because I think that's quite a natural setting for you. Yeah. And it's almost like I sense that is a mantra that brings confidence in your way, almost,
Yes. Yeah.
And yet I wonder, I don't know if it's true. I don't know if it's true for everyone in terms of that being a natural setting.
Yeah, potentially not.
What does it achieve for you, what is it, having that way as a leader? What does it achieve for you personally, having that way?
We're living at a time of great crisis, and there are no silver bullets to be able to solve some of the things that we're seeing and experiencing around us. So social crisis, environmental crisis, whatever it might be. And so taking people on the journey to solving those things, we have to enable them in their own settings. Ultimately, I believe that we will go there together. We will need to go there together to drive the change that we ultimately need to see.
Okay. Emma, thank you so much. I'm going to pause there. Thank you. It's been an absolute joy hearing your insight, hearing your energy in your collaborative ways, as always. Folks, I hope you have enjoyed this. I hope you found insight in Emma's stories. Her comments will be in the bio, so please, her comments, her email address will be in the bio. So do connect with her if anything has stood out, or if you have any burning questions. Click subscribe and join us next time. Thank you. Thank you, Emma.
Thank you.